everyone. Good evening. You're watching News Epicenter with me, Marya Shakil. On the first day of the new year and the big news on the vaccine front in the fight against the coronavirus. Sources say the expert panel has recommended conditional approval for Serum Institute of India's Covishield vaccine. The vaccine does not require any intensive cooling and can be stored in refrigerators, which is ideal for rollout across the country. This is still a conditional approval, which may entail limited Covishield supply to the government and no market availability. The Serum Institute will have to give more data to patients, while those taking the jab will have to sign a consent form. Meanwhile, healthy individuals will have to wait. Bharat Biotech and Pfizer are also in the running. Meanwhile, Zydus still awaits phase 3 trials of its vaccine. This even as more people have tested positive for the mutant strain today, while dry runs for vaccine delivery will kick off on Saturday across the country. So how closer are we to an effective vaccine rollout, and is the government ready to execute the world's largest immunization drive? Joining me first on the show is our big newsmaker, Dr. Naresh Trehan. He's the chairman of Medanta. Dr. Trehan, I appreciate your time. Let me begin by asking you, sir, AstraZeneca's Covishield has got conditional approval, which in itself is certainly a big news coming today, and dry runs across the country will begin tomorrow. How long do you see, sir, before the actual vaccination can begin in India?
So they've got the emergency approval for emergency use. That means that they can start rolling it out soon. But as you said, the dry runs are starting already in India, starting on Monday or tomorrow actually. So what will happen is that in the first successful trial runs that are done, as the centers get ready, then the vaccine can be rolled out. Because there are 50 million doses that the company says are ready.
Right.
And also the fact that they have the ability to be transported in normal fridge temperature, which is easy, suitable for India.
Right.
So I think with the government's planning that has already been in place for the last several weeks, with these dry runs actually running through the process, once that happens, I think in the next few days, we can start rolling it out. That's what I think would happen in the next 5-7 days.
Dr. Trehan, the conditional approval essentially means that Covishield will give limited supply to the government and won't be available in the market. So does it mean that those who want to take a vaccine and may not be in the priority list, they will have to really wait for much longer?
Yeah, it's true. It's true they'll have to wait because the government has already set the priority list. So they can now roll it out according to the priority being those of the frontline health workers and the elderly with comorbidities, elderly and younger people with comorbidities. So people who are less vulnerable will have to wait for some time. But like is known that the other vaccines are also in line, that Bharat Biotech may get approval in the next week, 2 weeks, in the coming weeks. Also, there is this Russian vaccine, which is with Dr. Reddy is doing clinical trials on, and that also may get approval in the coming times. So there will be enough supply as we go forward, because the Serum Institute has a very large capacity to actually roll out the vaccine. So I think that the wait may, maybe 3 months or 4 months for the people who are not so vulnerable. But as the vaccine starts, the vulnerability of the rest of the population also starts getting reduced. So it's a process. By the time 60% get vaccinated, we will have enough herd immunity.
So are we looking at some upper limit as to how many people have to be vaccinated to break that chain of spread of the virus, sir?
So from our experience, previous experience, the epidemiologists say that when you reach 60-70%, that also includes people who have already had it and developed antibodies. So 60-70% is the critical number.
Dr. Trehan, already over 1 million have been vaccinated in US. UK was first to start the process, and vaccination has already started in Latin America, countries like Mexico, Argentina, Chile and Costa Rica. Why do you think India took longer to approve a vaccine?
No, these are two different vaccines. You see, Pfizer and Moderna are the leaders from the US. Came online first, got the first approval. That's what was approved in UK and in USA. But the storage requirement for that is minus 70 degrees. So if that is so, we have to be very careful that we don't, it's not suitable for India. And there is not enough dosage available. So, and it's very expensive. So we were always developing, or like the Serum Institute has the capacity to actually manufacture large quantities. India is the manufacturer of large quantities of, or the largest manufacturer of vaccines. So this becomes the most suitable one, AstraZeneca, and that's why the government has been analyzing the data. Today's panel decided that there was enough data for safety and efficacy available for it to be granted emergency conditional approval. So I
Last
think
question to you.
has a significant role in it. And the initial stages, the government will control the entire system. Now, when more vaccines become available, the government may decide to give it the choice to people also. Well, that is sometime down the line. So let us get started. This is a big news for India and great relief for the people that the process has started and India is on the front line.
Last question to you, sir. I know you have to move on to another channel. Just a quick word on this consent form. Is that really how the vaccination processes work, that you have to sign a consent form?
Yes, you should, because you see, first of all, especially because it's emergency use, it's a conditional use, people must read what are the pros and cons of this vaccine and why they are opting to get it. It's voluntary. It's not compulsory. So people will have the choice of reading the material. They will be educated. Only then they will sign the form and consent form for getting the vaccine. So I think it's a very prudent medical process which is used in these kind of situations that we are in with the vaccine.
As one of the top doctors of the country, what will be your message to the people at large today? Should we be more careful and wait, because our trials and tribulations could be ending anytime soon?
So it should be taken right away, especially the frontline workers who are staking their life on a daily basis and have been doing so for the last 10 months. For them, this will be a big relief. And let them, once so many people have been vaccinated, we'll also know that the safety in very large numbers is also present. And then the public itself will get the confidence in getting the volunteering or getting the vaccine as it comes available to their segment. So I think that the process has to start. The maximum preparations have been done because it is, like you said, first people will be educated, they'll have to sign a form, then they get it, then we observe them for 45 minutes to an hour, that they don't get any reaction from the vaccine, and then the follow-up later. So all this process is already in place. The trial runs are being done right now, which is great. The dry run will be done, and that will also strengthen the process.
All right, Dr. Naresh Trehan, always a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me bring now Dr. Ashok Seth. He is the chairman of the Fortis Scots Heart Institute. Also on the show is Dr. Ajay Kumar. He's the chairman of the BLK Hospital. Dr. Kumar, thank you for your time. Certainly a good news as it is coming today. The conditional approval that we are looking at, why is India so circumspect? Is it because the manner in which we have handled COVID-19 so far? The mortality rate in India is one of the lowest in the world, and the Prime Minister has been leading by example, saying that wear mask, that is the only way forward.
Lucy, I think we are confusing the issues by taking the issue of mask and the vaccination together. Both the things are important. Mask, staying away, social distance will be important even after we have received or we have supplied vaccine to enough people. The issue is that vaccine circumspect is not based on that it is people are scared or worried about it. The reason is it has been a very unprecedented situation that you have a pandemic which has crippled the world population and the economy. Now, scientists have done a great job in coming up with a number of vaccines, but that's the first part. But the second part, which takes to test the safety and effectiveness. Now, effectiveness is well tested over short term. We do not know what is the long term effectiveness. Safety is also tested over short term. So the emergency use is because we need, there's a need for the society. So we need to immunize as many people as early as possible.
Okay.
Well, that is the reason there is a hesitancy, circumstantial, like all those emergency use. Otherwise, you see, if you have a full data over long term, then you don't need to use the word emergency.
Okay.
So it's a very welcome thing.
Right.
It's the right thing to do that we are getting the vaccine and we'll get more vaccines with the time. But I think the people should not be reluctant to take that. There
They
should
should
be
not
a
be reluctant to
this is
take the
going to be
vaccine because there is enough data to talk about its efficacy. Dr. Seth, thank you so much for joining us. What is the difference between emergency use authorization and conditional nod to a vaccine?
So emergency use authorization is a specific clause which exists in the regulatory authorities of all countries, which means that either repurposed drugs or drugs which are still in analysis, which are still under large trials, can actually undergo interim analysis. And if there's safety and efficacy in that interim analysis, in a prospective, randomized, blinded study is proven, then an emergency use authorization can be given as a life-saving drug in times of pandemic or other such disasters. What it also means is that scrutiny of the drug, results of the full trial, and analysis of the full trial would be done time to time. And the scrutiny of the drug will continue in terms of side effects to make sure that this drug, as proven to be safe in preliminary results, continues to be safe in the long term as well as efficacious. And that is what this whole thing is about.
Okay, so
conditional is a word used that if at any stage, conditional could actually mean a post-marketing surveillance, which actually sees that it could actually be removed at any time.
Okay.
However, this is not so in this drug because it's life-saving. But yes, analysis of the data would continue and scrutiny will continue.
So what is the difference between the way India has approached the vaccine approval vis-a-vis other countries? Because there has been the vaccination approval and the shots have started being given, world over, but India is taking the cautious line.
It is not the cautious line, it's taking the correct line. We must remember that just because a vaccine gets approved in the UK means that it was approved for UK, not in any other country. And that could be as a result of analysis of the data, but we must also remember that the trials have been done in Caucasians. There was a trial in Brazil and there were trials in South America. However, Indians were not included in that trial. We also have to study the 1,600 patients of Indians which were included in the phase 3 trial of the AstraZeneca vaccine, and luckily we have that data to purview. A drug may work differently in Caucasians and yet may work very differently in Hispanics, in Afro-Americans, in Asians, and in Indians. And that's another important aspect which our regulatory authority wanted to satisfy themselves, that what is the safety and efficacy of the drug in the Indians. It is very important that we have very intelligent scientists, we have tremendous researchers, and we have the depth of understanding and knowledge to identify for ourselves that if we go for a mass vaccination program, would that drug be actually safe for the Indians? And that is why this extra scrutiny was done. I compliment and commend our regulatory authorities for taking the time. A few days here or there is not going to matter as much as going to be the safety of the Indian population and satisfying and giving the confidence to the Indian population that their decisions are in favor of the country.
Dr. Seth, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. Dr. Ajay Kumar, come in on this. The BCG vaccine that is given to kids or the other vaccines that are given to children below, the toddlers, I would say, then that leaves, some people get sick because of they may get temperature or others. What kind of after effect is being foreseen as far as these vaccines are concerned?
See, whatever the information that is in the public domain right now, is that these side effects are all within acceptable limits. And these are usually local reactions of some soreness and some fever or some body aches for a day or two. If you look across any vector related vaccine, all these are within acceptable limits and are not harmful in the long term. We all know about the fears raised over the different vaccines over time, and a lot of people have become a so-called conspiratists to everything on the vaccine. But the biggest challenge came with the MMR vaccine, which said it creates autism. And later on, it was found out that it was related to the adjuvant into the vaccine rather than the vaccine itself. And later on, it was corrected. And fair enough, whenever there's a new medicine, for that matter, and it has to be one has to be cautious. But we have seen a lot of medicines in the post-marketing surveillance, as was pointed out by Dr. Seth, that they are found to be having side effects and they're withdrawn. Here, the issue is a mass vaccination across the population. And that's why it's a much bigger safety measures are required. But at the same time, you have a problem of a pandemic which has crippled the entire humanity.
So when we say,
I think this is the
Dr.
right
Kumar,
way forward, the right decision taken with the due cautions. And there's a way forward, and we are getting more vaccines in the pipeline. And as the time goes, we'll be more have more information, more safety data,
among
more
those
efficacious
who have
data.
to wait are the healthy people. That is the category that has been defined. What about the pregnant women and children?
Well, none of these trials, to my knowledge, have taken that, and no drug is actually, for that matter, is used initially in the pregnancy in the children. Only when it is approved, then it is used for this population. So certainly, at this stage, you cannot advise to this set of population, but that doesn't mean in the future you will not be eligible for that. When we'll have the data on that in future, and we'll go accordingly.
Okay, so we'll have to wait for more data. Dr. Ashok said, did we wait for Oxford's Covishield since it's much cheaper and much more easier to store?
So I think these are very important considerations, and you've raised the right point. I mean, it's not just the fact that it's easier and cheaper. The logistics for most developed world are simpler, primarily because of the fact that at that temperature of 2 to 8 degrees is a room temperature, is a refrigeration temperature, and the cold chains in most countries are used to this chain of 4 to 8, of 2 to 8 degrees and refrigeration. When we talk about mass inoculation, we also have to take in account, is the vaccine going to be imported or is it going to be manufactured in our own country? And again, this very important fact that this vaccine is actually being manufactured in India, there's already a stockpile. So having safety and efficacy is the first point, but also the logistics of application, the logistics of immunization of a vast population, the availability of the vaccine manufacturing within the country itself, and therefore transportation and logistics being easier. And finally, the cost being low actually makes it the vaccine for the world, and that is why it was titled as a vaccine for the world. It is important to understand that if the logistics are fine, we will actually be able to vaccinate a large population of people because we're talking about 2 doses. We're not talking about 1 dose. We're also talking about giving a vaccine 4 to 6 weeks later, which is a second logistic of a huge population. Yes. And I think those are very important aspects. And yes, these would have been considered in actually deciding which would be the first vaccine to enter this country.
Dr. Kumar, you know, there have been reports that have come in of an individual taking a shot of the vaccine and then getting the coronavirus and testing positive. How are we to look at those stories?
You see, those are the stories that we need to look into. But at the same time, please remember that when this vaccine is to be taken 2 doses, you cannot expect its effectiveness till we have finished the 2 doses and we get the antibodies to that. So to attribute the disease to the application of the vaccine is entirely wrong and misgiving and misleading.
Okay.
Let's not believe that,
Okay.
because it's only that I can understand if you are giving a live virus vaccine, then you can have some more problems. We had a lot of problems with the rabies vaccine at one time, and all those things have been sorted out.
Okay.
But see, it is always good to be cautious. It is always good to go slow, but at the same time, it is not to be going to a level that we create total distrust and
Yes.
total disbelief in what the scientists are offering to us.
Yes.
And that is the
You
only
know,
way out.
because this
Other thing
entire,
is that,
yes,
okay,
Dr. Seth wants to come in, and Dr. Seth, you know what's commendable to the humanity and the scientist community at large is the real time, that the vaccine development has happened in real time.
And that, firstly, let me just also say a few words about what you raised.
Yes.
It's so important, that instance, and it's so important to allay for us the misinformation and the disinformation.
Yes.
Because that's going to be vital. We're not saying force it on people. Let people come out and understand the vaccine and accept it, but it's our responsibility to make people understand about the side effects. That particular instance, and it's been raised again and again, was a nurse who actually works in a COVID ward. She got a first dose of vaccine, and the vaccine starts developing antibodies only 2 weeks later, even after the first dose, with a 50% efficacy. This happened to her after 4 days. It had nothing to do with the vaccine. The vaccine didn't even have time to work. She actually acquired the disease process in due course of her work. So that's to be understood. But very importantly, your question raised, sorry, I missed out the point about what you raised.
Yes,
Marya,
about the vaccine being developed in real time.
For once, the whole world got together.
Yes.
We must remember that the intelligentsia, the scientists, the virologists, the clinicians, the researchers all got together. But more importantly, the funding came in hugely from every country across the world, from the huge foundations actually funded. We must remember earlier the vaccines took time because not just was the process longer, but the funding wasn't available. The science had to be actually created and developed. For once, there was one enemy and the whole world was together in every aspect of every vertical which a vaccine development needs, right from funding to intelligence to science to researchers to the final result. And there was a target, and it was warp speed. And so, yes, there was an intention, and the intention was, let's get rid of this virus. The survival is at stake.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seth and Dr. Jayakumar. Thank you so much for joining us and wishing both of you a very happy new year. So as we inch closer to a vaccine, we are now getting you the inside track of the vaccine delivery plan. 31 hubs have been identified by the government from where vaccines can be picked up. 29,000 vaccination points have also been identified, while the cost-sharing agreement between the centre and the states is yet to be decided. Sneha is joining me on the phone line. Sneha, go ahead.
Yes, Marya, what's important is that eventually how will the vaccine be reaching states that are, entrusted with the task of inoculating the priority groups which have already been identified. 31 vaccination hubs that have been identified, and these are the hubs from where the states will be picking the vaccine doses up and transporting them to the respective states. So the responsibility of picking the vaccines lies with the states. 29,000 vaccination sites, and this could increase, is what sources within the National Task Force have told me, that there is a possibility of this increasing as and when the need arises. Also the cost here, two things. The vaccine doses have to be bought from Serum Institute, and there also is going to be some sort of an agreement, obviously, with Bharat Biotech, which has developed this vaccine in partnership with the Indian Council of Medical Research, who will then be bearing this cost, because 30 crore people that the government is going to inoculate eventually is not something that the government is going to be charging the people for. These are frontline workers, these are healthcare workers, and these are priority groups. And who is then going to pick the cost, pick the tab, really? This is something that's going to be decided eventually, or rather, the government is working on the modalities. Is there going to be some sort of a cost-sharing agreement between the center and the state? This, again, is an option that the government is looking at. However, the preparedness continues, As far as procuring the syringes for the same is concerned, the dry runs tomorrow is going to be decisive in getting a sense of what are the loopholes and how do they need to be filled. I did speak with a source within the Union Health Ministry about the inoculation starting this week itself, to which there has been some sort of a denial. In fact, the government source is really indicating that the vaccination will maybe not take place this week itself, but it is a matter of time really before it starts is what I've been given to understand. But the dry run again tomorrow, like I said, important, and all of the modalities are being worked out.
All right, Sneha, thank you so much for joining us. So rollout plan worked out, priority list decided, dry runs are happening. New Year certainly starting on a very, very optimistic note. That's all from me. Thanks so much for watching and wishing all the viewers a very happy New Year.